Hello there. I want to take the time today to talk a little bit about this book. This is another excellent book by Thomas Erikson. He has written a number of books about relationships and about people and about personalities and how we can get on better with others, how we can recognise our own personality and the different traits we have, and how likely we are to work together with the other types of people. So this book would be of interest to anyone who is willing to get better at working with different types of people, to improve their ability to form effective, meaningful relationships, especially in the workplace. Thomas Erikson has really written this book to address how we can get on with people in the workplace who have different personalities from our own, with a specific focus on vampires. And what he is talking about here is people that can drain our energy, demotivate us, can make us feel tired at the end of the day. So you go home and you're just absolutely exhausted, completely drained of energy, enthusiasm, and he calls these people vampires and discusses a number of different types. The book is an extension on his other book, Surrounded by Idiots, and if you remember, he talks about 4 different personality types. He also gives adjectives to describe each of the different types, and his basic theory is that most people are 1 or 2 colours, sometimes 3, but he generally believes that people can be grouped into the 4 different colours. So I myself probably am mostly green with a little bit of blue and a little bit of red. But just to kind of remind you, if you haven't read that book, it's another excellent book. The red type are assertive, they are task-oriented extroverts, they can be quite bossy, they're ambitious, they can push people out of the way in order to achieve their goal. It's all about results, and they don't really care about other people's feelings in extremis. Most people are a mix of 2 colours, so you'd find people that are maybe 60% red, 30% yellow, maybe with 10% green. But that is the characteristics of a red person. Yellow person is a people-orientated extrovert. So these are people that enjoy communication with others, talkative, affable, smiley, optimistic, like to be the centre of attention, like to talk about stories and share what they did at the weekend and how everything is so amazing. These are the yellows. Greens are people-orientated introverts. His view is that most people are green. They make up the majority, something like 40% of people fall into majority green. And these are people who are quite conservative, reliable, prudent, people that can be trusted. They keep themselves to themselves, they're conflict averse, and they like to get things done without causing too much trouble. They're quite agreeable people, and these are the greens. Then we have the blues. These are task-orientated introverts. They have a penchant for details. If they buy a microwave, the first thing they do is read the instructions manual. They're very picky, they're meticulous, methodical, highly logical. They can scrutinise and criticise decisions, thoughts, ideas. These are the blue people. Now, as I've just described them, you can possibly see where conflict might arise. So in the last chapter of the book, after he has spoken about a number of types of vampire, he talks about how the colours can clash. So the biggest potential clash is between the blues and the yellows. The blues being introverted and preferring rationality, and they're quite cold and distant. They like to talk about specifics and details, and they don't get on with people that are particularly yellow. They find them very irritating and draining, because yellows will be very emotional people. They will, everything will be done with a smile and with a melodic tone of voice, excited voice. Everything is going fantastic. Everything's going to work out fine. There's big conflict potentially between the blues and the yellows. There's also conflict between the reds and the greens, because the reds want things done, they want objectives met, they don't care about how it gets done, they just want it done, they're results driven. They can rub the greens up the wrong way. There's a lot of potential friction, because the greens are quite self-conscious, and they can possibly, if they're extremely green, they can think that the reds are bullying them and telling them what to do and impolite, and the greens won't take to the assertiveness of the reds particularly well if it's done in an inconsiderate manner. One of the main things about this book is that he tries to get the readers to think about which type they are, to think about their own personality. The primary purpose of this book is to try to improve the reader's ability to get on with the other colours. So if you can identify what your main colours are, then it's possible to recognise, okay, this person's probably a green. What's the best way I'm going to deal with this person, such that we can avoid conflict and we can actually be productive and complete our task and collaborate in a way where we both gain, we both win. Okay, so this is what the book is all about. The bit about the colours actually comes at the very end of the book. He does talk about a number of vampires. The first one he talks about is the perfectionists, and these are possibly the extreme blues. These can become very tiring if we're constantly around people that are nitpicking, pointing out the flaws, pointing out the imperfections. Okay, the chair's not tucked in properly, you didn't wash the cup completely, you didn't perform a particular task perfectly. To be constantly have somebody pedantic and criticising all of the time can become very tiring. What he has done, quite interestingly, for each type, so this is the chapter, it's the first chapter on perfectionists, and he first of all talks about what perfectionists are, and he's given the reader a number of criteria, because first of all he wants to improve our ability to spot and recognise perfectionist vampire. So he's given 10 criteria. So 1, deems it necessary to point out every possible flaw, doesn't like to admit to their own mistakes, rarely displays emotion, has a hard time finishing tasks, keeps their promises, is a genuine workaholic, never takes time off, adheres to a strict ethical and moral code, micromanages others, takes longer to prepare for a task than to actually perform it. Okay, so if you know somebody that's maybe 8, that meets 8 of those 10 criteria, then you're dealing with a perfectionist. And what I really like about the book is that he kind of gives a little diagram for each type, explaining why they are vampires. And you can see there, so This type of vampire is not the worst for most people, although if you happen to be a yellow, you will find this extreme blue, the perfectionist, quite bothersome. But you can see there 73% energy drain. Okay, what he does at the end of the chapter, he gives a number of stories about perfectionists in real life that he has encountered. But at the end of the chapter, he gives strategies for dealing with perfectionists. And in this particular case, he talks about how you have to not take them too seriously, try to find the humour in their absolute need for things to be done a particular way, constantly remind them that they agreed on a particular thing, and get them to agree to it. And so then there can be little room for criticising or scrutinising objectives if you're absolutely crystal clear. You know, this is what we agreed to do, it's done, there's no need to complain or criticise about the particularities of particularities. And in this way you can protect your energy from being drained. There is another vampire which he talks about. So that after talking about the perfectionist, he talks about drama queens who demand red carpets. And you know, this can be a particular drain on blues, but these are people that are highly emotional, kind of mischievous, like to cause problems, and everything is melodramatic. And in the workplace, he talks about how people that are trying to complete tasks and get things done to the best of their ability, somebody like this can be draining because everything is hot air, everything is, you know, up in the sky, emotion rather than facts, and tangible, concrete policies and structures that are actually going to enable important tasks to be completed. So the way he says to deal with drama queens is to try to accommodate them as best as possible. A lot of his advice is predicated on the idea that, you know, you can't really ask a cat to stop chasing mice. It's in the cat's nature. Many of these personality types are ingrained into the other person. So you're fighting an uphill struggle, and you'll constantly be worn down if you battle these types. What he really is trying to get the readers to do is just how to adapt, maneuver, engage, disengage with the different traits in order to preserve your sanity and your energy. So in this case, he talks about how sometimes it can be a good idea to play along. You know, if the person, the drama queen, is making a big deal out of something, you know, don't stand there with a serious face, because they can potentially cause a lot of conflict. If you hurt their feelings, they'll take it particularly badly, and they might spread gossip or rumours, but they'll see you as an enemy if they get the feeling that you don't like them. These are extreme yellows. Everything is about relationships and friendship with these types. So he talks about how we can work better with people that are particularly yellow. He then talks about someone who's potentially very red, the bully. Talks about a story, something that he has encountered. Bullies enjoy and get energy from bossing other people around, being insulting, hurting other people's feelings. They're highly disagreeable people, they don't care. One thing he says in the book is that it might be the best case to simply walk away. If the workplace has a bully or has a number of bullies, the best strategy might be simply to walk away. And he asks the reader a question, why are you there? And if you can't really answer that, If your answer to that is, I'm scared to look for another job, I'm scared to lose friends who I've made in the workplace, probably it's a good idea to move on, because one thing that he does emphasise is that bullies can be extremely dangerous. He talks about how someone needed 6 months off with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because this particular bully was incredibly nasty and made their life absolutely miserable. And he says to avoid conflict or avoid getting in an argument, because it'd be water off a duck's back to them. They won't care. They'll probably enjoy it, and you'll just go home and feeling absolutely stressed and drained and tired. Another strategy for dealing with people who are bullies is to ask for more time. Always take the sting out of the circumstances, and just try to be rational and accommodating where possible if you want to stay in that environment. But it's a decision that only the individual can make, because some people, if they're very green, for example, they might, suffer much worse, much more than, say, somebody who's also a red, like a minor red versus a major red. The minor red, maybe he won't or she won't care that much, kind of thicker skin and less sensitive to hostility and disagreements. But he talks about a number of other vampires as well. Passive-aggressive people. These are like extreme greens, people who try quite hard not to say what they actually think, and try to get away with as much as possible and do as little work as possible, and be lethargic, and through their body language, they're hostile, and they don't want to work, they don't want to do anything. He talks about strategies with dealing with these types as well. And then he talks about eternal victims, narcissists. His advice with narcissists is to simply walk away, because they can be very damaging. And he talks about other types, whiners, and then at the very end he goes to talk about general advice, which you can read, and I would highly recommend you actually take the time to read this book. I've given a brief sort of overview and my opinion on it. I think it's excellent, and very much looking forward to reading his other books. But an excellent book, and a really good supplement to the other book he wrote, which I think has sold millions of copies. Very, very famous, influential book, Surrounded by Idiots, and this is an excellent extension to the first book. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. As I say, there's so much more to talk about. There's plenty of other things that he goes into, but this is just an overview of sort of what this book is about and why you might wish to read it. Thanks for watching.